working, and it is the most insane thing in the world. I'm absolutely loving playing around with it. I feel like a little kid on Christmas, and I suppose it's apt for this time of the year. And as James mentioned, we do have a little beetle. Now, this little beetle I have actually never, ever, ever in my life seen before. It is a tiny little dung beetle that we have. So it is small, and it is got little kind of yellow and black markings on it. You can see it's covered in sand at the moment. This poor little beetle has been burrowing through the road, and we spotted it coming off a bit of elephant dung, and that's also why it's a bit sticky and the sand is all sticking to it, because it's been in the moist elephant dung for a while. And it's amazing to watch it because it goes burrowing through the sand at times. Now it's just sitting ever so quietly. Of course, it hasn't been doing this the whole time we've been with it. It's been all over the place, and I feel like I've moved this microscope about 20 times to try and keep it in frame, and now it's sitting very patiently so that you can all see it. It almost doesn't look alive at this stage, but I can assure you it is very much alive, and can assure you that it is very fast. Now, I'm sorry, I've just bumped the microscope slightly, which is not ideal. I was hoping that he was going to burrow around and you would be able to see that head action at work, because it is absolutely unbelievable to see how small it is. And this particular little guy is only about the size of some of these small particles of sand. It really is amazing how little it is. I'm going to try and take the microscope away and just give it a little pickup so that you can see just how tiny this little beetle is. Where are you, little beetle? There we go. So I'm going to put it on my hand. You can see he's going to move quite fast. Oh no, beetle, don't go there. It's now gone back onto the road. Maybe we can actually get a better view of it. I'll try on the microscope one more time. There we go. It might be digging down now. That's much better. We can actually see it digging, which is very, very cool. So it's now going into the sand. You can see how it uses that shovel-like head to dig its way underneath the soil and to be able to hide away from a predator. So it's being very clever in its way it does things. This, of course, is also how it's going to emerge when it was a little beetle and it's going to start feeding, and how it's going to be able to lay its larvae, if it is that type of dung beetle that does lay larvae. But you can see the particles of the road there, which is the little sand particles, and how small that little beetle is in comparison. It is absolutely fascinating. I'm thoroughly enjoying playing with this microscope. I think I'm going to try and see what other things I can find. And talking about microscopic beetles and small beetles, Noel has found a little carnivore that I'm sure would love to eat one of these little guys up.
So we do dwarf mongoose a lot on the show because we amazingly see them quite a lot, but Senzo and I are right next to this termite mound where this little dwarf mongoose is smelling us and looking around. We're getting the most amazing visual, as you all can see. I mean, it's right next to the car. Senzo, I don't know if you want to zoom out a little bit just so everyone can see. I mean, literally right here. So Senzo and I have been talking in whispers and sitting very still and moving very slowly so that he'll pop his head out, just like you saw now. Now, the rest of this business of mongoose is around in the bushes. There's another one. Do you see just here at about 2 o'clock, Senzo? You read my mind, my friend. There's a few more out foraging, looking for insects, possibly beetles like the one Tristan was showing you through the microscope. And if you move slowly around them and then sit sort of quietly, they obviously will just carry on their business and will find you quite interesting. And sometimes when you're this close, you can really hear their communications. It's this tiny little cheep, 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 cheep. It's a tiny little chirping noise that they do. Now, one of my favorite sightings of this year was actually with Senzo. Senzo, when was it? About a month ago? 5 weeks ago, something like that, when we had dwarf mongoose that were chasing a black mamba around. It was pretty amazing. So, for me, dwarf mongoose are kind of like the wild dogs of the small mammal community because they move so quickly and have such severe ADD that anything can happen at any moment. Now, it seems as if everybody has meandered off into spots where we can't see them. Oop, there's one now. And we're not getting any of the noises that I'd like to hear, and our one that's right next to the car has decided not to pop out his head again. Those ones are playing over there. Paula, that's a really interesting question. Sens, can we come back to these holes here? So, Paula, where they're living are inside of a termite mound. And those holes that you're seeing are not burrows that they've made. It's actually collapsed chimneys from inside the termite mound. So that termite mound is still active, like the one that James was showing you. Every mound is a little bit different. And then they live inside of these opened up chimneys, as well as things like monitor lizards and snakes. Certain types of birds will also live in there. And then we've seen larger cavities that are dug out by things like aardvark, and then lived in by hyena, or similar to Tundy's den. So those chimneys actually go down quite far into the termite mound. It can be several yards, it could be tens of yards. It just depends on where the water table is. But the mongoose don't necessarily go all the way down to where the water table is. Now, inside those chimneys, it wouldn't surprise me if there's little nooks and crannies that they've sort of dug out a little bit with their claws to live inside of, but those initial ones is not their making. It's very, very interesting. All right, so we've been tracking elephants. We've been tracking a huge herd of elephants for about 3 kilometers now, and unfortunately these elephants have gone south into Little Gowrie. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go lurk along the boundary and see if Shadow wants to pop up, or possibly if the wild dogs want to pop up. That's our plan from here. So while we are busy looking for any rosetted creatures or painted wolves, let's head on up to the Masai Mara, where Jamie has one of the 3 big cats that we have on
with our lions. Not all that much is distracted, and they vanished into the bush. Any sign of them? Oh, I can see them. And they are making their way back. Hold on. Make me just shift out of the way. Al Jahawi and I are eyeing out the weather, and it's not looking positive, no matter which direction we look in. It appears as though... Is there a car behind me? No. Wonderful. Just mud. The little cubs are going to come into view shortly. In fact, you should be able to see them. I want to go further back into the mush. There they are. There's one. Now, Nadia, you want to know if a lion will have a single mate throughout their lives. And the answer to that is no, absolutely not. They will have multiple males that they mate with, or multiple females, depending on what we're talking about. So as these little cubs make their way back towards their mothers, a lioness will, essentially the way that lion dynamics work, a male coalition has territory, and that territory encompasses the territory of several different prides, and therefore several different lionesses. They'll mate with those lionesses for around about 2 to 3 years before they are ousted by another group of young males. Obviously, this is a general rule. They will then move on, possibly to a new territory, and the new males will start mating with those females, and the old males will start mating with other females. So no, there is no monogamy within a lion pride or coalition. And actually females will mate with as many males as they possibly can within their estrus cycle. So first of all, it's just naturally instinctive for them, and secondly, it helps to, doesn't eliminate the risk, but it helps to eliminate the risk of the cubs being killed by a male, because males will kill cubs that do not belong to them or their coalition mate, because it will bring the female back into estrus faster and allow them to mate with her, and therefore sire their own cubs rather than the cubs of another male. Little naughty things, going wandering into the dangerous big wide world. Luckily, you've got one large mother and 2 big aunties to keep you safe. I was telling you the story of a Kinney. Kinney. She disappeared away from her mum at around about this age, possibly even a little bit younger, and she was gone for 9 days before reuniting with mum and her 2 brothers. Now, Lippy's now no longer with us, but Kinney, her daughter, is. Stalking through the grass. You're going to go and pounce on a sibling. There are some very ominous rumblings of thunder here. Vicious and delicious. With the storm coming, no, it never snows here. It might hail. In fact, it has hailed very small hailstones. Aww. Pounce. A very gentle pounce there. It might hail very small hailstones, but that's about as icy as it gets here. There won't be any snow. Bear in mind, we are very close to the equator, and although we are high in altitude, we're not that high. Oh, here comes the other cub, I imagine. Hence the reason for the crouch. Assume the stalk position. Completely flat in the grass now. Oh, lion cub number 2 is distracted. It's veered off in a different direction. Here we go. Get him! I love lion cubs at this age. They are just so unbelievably playful. It's so sweet. I miss watching leopard cubs do this as well. It's one thing that we haven't managed to really find in the Mara. We know where they are. We know where the relaxed females are with cubs, but a lot of the time they're in very bad signal areas. Was that a drop of rain? No. No, Joe, it wasn't. Just pretend it's not. If we pretend it's not happening, then it's not happening, right? Okay, we'll ignore the clouds and the giant storm that is engulfing the escarpment and racing towards us at the speed of, well, clouds. Oh, goodness. Okay, well, Jahawe and I contemplate our fate. Off you go to James, who's having a far nicer time enjoying looking at the flowers.
I am definitely having a far nicer time enjoying the flowers, and to my mind, the assertion that there's a long rain and a short rain season in Kenya is utter rubbish. It rains all the time there. In fact, it probably rains more there than it does in England, which of course is impossible. Now, what we have here is the beautiful yellow flowers, the blooms of Peltiforum africanum, or the weeping wattle. And I was hoping to find a fruit chaffer or two, which are little beetles, often very prettily coloured, but I haven't found any fruit chaffers here. But what we have found are some drop-tailed ants. Now, if you were on walk with us this morning, which of course you should have been for your morning exercise on Sunday, you would have known, or you would have seen, me talk about the drop-tailed ants then. There we have one. And what this drop-tailed ant is doing, I still don't know. I think perhaps it's looking for aphids. It might also be looking for little bits of plant exudate. Or what we did find this morning was a little frog hopper, or spittlebug. This is interesting, actually. We found a spittlebug being tended to by these ants. And what's very interesting is that this plant, the weeping wattle, is called the weeping wattle because of the fact that it gets spittlebugs on it. So I wonder if that's not what this ant is looking for. I don't see any spittlebugs, and in fact the one that I found today was possibly one of the only ones I've ever seen. One would also expect to find crab spiders on a tree like this, little spiders disguised like the flowers that are sitting here at roast dinner. Let's have a look here. You need the eyes of Stefan Winterboer in order to find this sort of thing. Now, Kaylin, you're asking about a species of arachnid. Well, not a species, a whole family of arachnids called the red romans, or sun spiders, or more particularly the solifuges. And we do get them here, absolutely. They are, to most arachnophobes, quite the most terrifying creatures in the world. They run at an astonishing speed. They've got these vicious kind of scissor-like toothed jaws at the front of their faces that kind of slide over each other like this, and the kind of things you really wouldn't want to get caught in. Totally harmless to human beings, but they do look vicious, especially when you look at them under a microscope. And I had one outside my room the other day. It was a little fellow like that, and he ran around at a speed that defied belief. It would be a bit like you and I being able to run at around about 60 miles an hour to 100 kilometers an hour. It really was just amazing. So yes, we do get them here. I'm afraid I can't find you one in this sort of weather, I don't think, but if we get very lucky, then I shall. What that is. Tom, you want to know if the word beetly is the correct way to pronounce beetle? No, it's not. It is a joke. I'll tell you where the joke comes from. The word LE has no equivalent in Shangaan out here, and so often words that end in LE are said by local people as they're spelt. So they say beetly or litly, and so litly, beetly, and that sort of thing. And you can imagine some of the conversations that people have and the giggles they have with each other when words like that are pronounced. It's often quite funny when people mispronounce each from. And then, James, you're wondering which species of insect has a symbiotic relationship with a fungus. I don't trying to think if I know of an insect that has a symbiotic relationship with the fungus. Well, I mean, the termites do. Those fungus-growing termites have a symbiotic relationship. The fungus would not grow. It's a very specific species of fungus that wouldn't grow in the absence of the termites. The termites are able to create the correct conditions, the right amount of moisture, the right temperature for the fungus to grow in, and without them, it wouldn't exist. They've co-evolved together to live with each other, completely dependent on each other. So they are symbiotic. For the termites, they of course get nourishment from the fungus, which helps them to digest the cellulose and lignin and other structural material in the plants that the termites are unable to digest themselves. So that would be a good example of one. It's a bit of I feel like, James, you were asking perhaps for something slightly less obvious than that, and I can't think of. I mean, there are lots of ants that have that kind of relationship, but it's the same sort of relationship. If you have one that you can think of, I'd be very, very pleased to try and understand it or go and research it. But yeah, those are the only one that comes to mind right now. Let me see what else I can find you. There's a lack of signal and obviously an enormous storm in the Masai Mara, and so you're going to have to stick with me for a little while. Let's have a look in here. Ooh. Now, I suspect quite strongly that something fairly large has spent a substantial amount of time in here, possibly a warthog. Anyway, I'm going to have a bit of a rest here, see what I can see. And while I do that, you're going to go for a little drive with Noel.
Hello, James. I'm so sorry that you've gotten so old that you need to rest after an hour and a half. And I've got a tear for you. Anyway, so it's a really interesting question. What other insects have a symbiotic relationship with fungi? And James, honestly, myself as well, all I can think of is the termites, but it's tickling my file 13 when it's saying that, so I'm assuming it's also tickling your file 13, which is why you're passing the question on forward. And I'm trying to think of... Yeah, I mean, insects, unless we count things like lobster and prawns as insects, and then eating sort of fungal-like plant matter in oceans, I guess we could go with that train of thought. But yeah, I can't honestly, it's such an interesting question, I can't honestly think of it. And I'm sure we both have friends at home that are sitting there and yelling, oh, what about this? And neither of us is thinking of it. It will come. Alright, so my search for Tandi, yeah. And I haven't picked up any other leopard tracks. I got really excited because there were some vultures earlier, but I think they're just resting because of the cold. heating up the ground, and we're also coming towards evening, so that could be a reason. So I'm sort of patrolling our eastern boundary just to see if the wild dogs want to come back from Torchwood, which is on our right-hand side. And it doesn't seem as if they have yet. But as you know, they move here and they move there and they zig and they zag. So we might just get lucky. And other than that, yes, it's been a good afternoon, but it's been relatively quiet, especially after all the excitement we've been having. Well, I know Senzo and I have, and poor Wendy here, have done some serious boondoo bashing over the past couple of drives and had some amazing times with the wild dogs. And look, I'll take out my own eye teeth just to see wild dogs. They're my absolute favorite. I dig them. And I'm trying to think, elephants. There's been loads of elephants, especially this morning, but it feels as if everything sort of moves. Days we get everything, and some days it's a little bit longer. Julia, have I ever been on the drive where I have not seen any animals? Well, Julia, there's always birds. Birds are always around. No, I've never been on a drive where we haven't seen anything. I've been on drives where I haven't seen any of the big five, but I've never been on a drive where I haven't seen any birds and or other wildlife species, no. But it depends, Julia, on where you work. So a lot of the places I've worked have very high population densities of multiple different species of bush wildlife. One of the reserves I used to work at was amazing for its complexity of antelope species. So even if you didn't see any of the big five or magnificent seven on a drive, you would probably see about 10 different antelope species, as well as zebra and things like that. And birds are always around. A lot of the birds that I've personally been seeing today are birds that we do very often, and I'm looking for ones that we don't see as often to show you. So I think let's head on over to Tristan. Maybe he'll find the painted snipe for us. I did get a quick glimpse of the painted snipe near Chitwa Dam yesterday, and let's see what he has to show us.
Well, it'd be nice to find a painted snipe. It's been a while since I've seen one. The last time I saw one was at Twin Dams a few months ago, so it'd be good to see one again. But I don't think so just yet. I've just arrived at Chitwa Dam. We literally have just gone up onto the dam wall, so I'm still surveying around to see what there is. It seems quite quiet, though, with as though most of them are under the water at this stage. The weather's turned a little bit foul. It's gotten quite overcast and rather windy and cold, and so not great weather for a number of our animals to be frolicking about and showing themselves. So every now and then you just see these nostrils from a hippo kind of poking up out of the water. I wonder if our little baby crocs are around. It's been so long since I've been in this area that I haven't seen any of the baby crocs for quite some time. Now there is some kudu there. You can see they're actually inside the lodge. Very clever kudu. Go in and on the other side of the fence. That will make sure that you're a little bit safer from various other things, and they will go in there all because they're really going to go and feed off all the vegetation that's in there. At the end of the day, a lot of the lodges have lots of plants that they water, and there tends to be flowering delicious food items for them, and so you'll find that they'll go inside there to go and feed. It also tends to be a little safer. You'd find that the predators, even though they do move around the lodges, and we know that Hosana and Tamba seem to think that Chitwa belongs to them these days, and they both go and lounge around on the decks while the guests have dinner, but typically it's a little bit safer. But what's interesting me is that so those far left kudu, they're all kind of staring with their ears out, and maybe it's because there is another kudu that has just moved into frame. You can see there's another kudu that's just arrived, so that's maybe why they were just looking at that one coming along. There also seems to be a few bushbuck and Nyala floating around within the lodge as well. But maybe let's go forward a little bit, Ferg, and let's see if our baby at a situation where it seems, from what I've been talking to Ferg about, is that there's only one little croc that he's seen. So hopefully the other three are still around. Lorena, you want to know what is on the front of our vehicle? Well, this is, firstly, I think the best way to start this is that this is James's vehicle, and I'm just borrowing it for the day. And what is on the front of the vehicle is what James deems to be his insignia for Jigger, which is a waterbuck skull. Now, I will get it out now. We'll try and sort of secure or unwedge it from the front of the car, even though that's not a word. Oh, there's a pygmy kingfisher. So you see just on the edge there, Ferg, right on the edge of the water, just off the top. There we go. There it is, just on the right. Is it a pygmy or is it a malachite? Oh, it's a malachite kingfisher. So I thought it was a pygmy at first because of these guys in ages. So that's super cool to see. They are incredibly beautiful little birds. You can see that bright red beak, the little white section on the collar, and then that sort of iridescent blue purple coloration off the back. And so one of the things about being at Chitwa Dam is that you never know what you're going to find, and that is an absolutely welcome surprise to our afternoon here. So now that we've got our little kingfisher that is flown away, I might as well see if I can try and get these horns out for you so I can show you what these actually are, because at the end of the day this is James's idea of decoration. And so you've got a massive set of waterbuck horns. Now these waterbuck horns, as you can see, are fairly large. This particular waterbuck is a waterbuck I recovered after the Nkahuma Pride was the ones that actually killed this. It was a waterbuck that was killed close to the boundary with Arathusa. You can see there is a little bit of sort of blood and bits on it still. It was killed, I think, if I remember correctly, it must have been about November last year, November, December, somewhere around there was where it was killed. And so we decided we would pick it up, and I know that James has been doing all kinds of interesting things with this waterbuck skull. It is an incredible set of horns. This is a really large waterbuck that you've got here, and what's amazing is that you can tell a lot about the horn structure of this animal. Firstly, if you have a look at it, it's got lots of these ridges running all the way up. Now this is typical of any of the antelope species that fight for dominance. So when they're fighting for dominance, at the end of the day, if they had smooth horns like the top, there's very little resistance. And so what you would find is that as they clash horns, the horns would slip and you would get up a situation where they then stab each other in the neck. But if they've got these ridges, when they come together, the horns will actually lock together, and you'll have a situation where those two can push and test each other's strength rather than actually slip and stab each other, because at the end of the day, they don't want to kill each other. They just really want to establish who is dominant. So very, very cool to see, and it is an incredible set that we have got. Now I'm going to probably put them back because I don't want to break them and to destroy them in any way whatsoever. So we're going to put these back for James, sort of thing to have on the front of a car, I would imagine. I don't know, it certainly is going to evoke some fear. Well, there we go, the hippos agree, and they think that it is very nice and evokes a little bit of fear as well, so that's quite cool. Now there are lots of hippos around, including little baby hippos, which is quite nice. I saw a little one just now, just on the backside of its mother. It was kind of sitting there and having a little sort of look around and sleep, and I'm sorry that if I disturbed it, because I didn't want to when I got out. I was hoping that the little one would stay where it was, but it seems as though it's gone under. There it is. Hello, little one. Now I wonder if this is Boo, our little hippo that we saw born a few months ago, or if it is the other one that Noel found the afterbirth for. David, you're wondering if crocodiles attack nests that aren't their own. So, in terms of the actual nesting structure, I've never seen a crocodile going in and digging out the nest and getting to the eggs and to the little ones. But once they are brought back into the water source, then yes, that can happen. You do see a situation where other crocodiles will prey upon baby crocs. So as the little baby crocs maybe venture too far, they will get preyed upon by other crocodiles. In this particular case, you'll see that the larger crocodiles, she tends to spend a lot more time quite close to where these little ones are being kept, which is in this corner, same as this baby hippo and its mother. It's a nice sort of shallow section. There's a little bit of a bank that they can go and lie on, and they're able then to stay nice and safe in this little kind of cove within Chitwa Dam. It's actually very shallow here. It looks quite deep in this corner, but it's actually a very shallow section, and all of the hippos and even the little baby crocs that are hiding out in amongst that fallen over tree. Oh, sounds like we've got some elephants that are maybe coming this way as well. In fact, I can see them all the way at the back, so they're going to slowly start meandering their way down, which will be very nice indeed. But as I was saying, it's a nice shallow section, so the hippos can lie down there and the little babies can rest with them, and for the crocodile there's a little bit of structure that those little babies can get into, and then the mom can go and lie up on the bank and keep a watchful eye over them, so that if any other big crocodiles come along and want to feed off those little ones, that she can chase them away. The problem problem is that being a baby crocodile in a system like this means that you've got a number of predators, and so catfish, fish eagles, martial eagles, those things are all going to be predators for those little crocs, and so it's a dangerous life, and you'll find that probably 90% of these crocs are not going to survive. At the end of the day, a big crocodile female like that, she could probably have laid anywhere between 60 and 90 eggs, and we've only actually seen 4 crocodiles here, so she might have lost all the others to monitor lizards or whatever else may have raided the nest, and then as they've come into the water, so things like catfish and fish eagles and various other predators have killed them. So it's a tough life out here, but yes, to answer the original question, is that other crocodiles will most certainly go after the young of a different crocodile itself. Right, but while we sit here, I believe Noelle's got something very exciting, so let's quickly link across to her.
Oh my goodness, everyone. We came up here to do some filming with this injured wild dog because we have the hopes that it's going to get better. And this is the scene that we found. I don't know what's going to happen. It's an interesting scene. For anyone that's sensitive, maybe don't watch. But this is very, very interesting. I don't know if the hyena is waiting to see if this dog will fight back. Obviously, the dog's moved from where we saw it this morning. Where we saw it this morning was probably about 100 meters, 100 yards from where we are now. Again, if you're sensitive, maybe don't watch. But if you want to see nature at its best, this is a very good thing to be watching. I can't even begin to describe to you how incredibly interesting this is, because even though that hyena is much larger than that wild dog, and obviously a lot more fit than this wild dog that we're seeing, it's still displaying submissive behavior with this injured dog. So it can tell. I personally think this hyena can tell that this wild dog is injured, but the wild dog is growling enough. I mean, look at that. That is huge submissive behavior. Do you see there? I mean, and it's chewing on its. Yes. Oh my goodness gracious, everyone. This dog does not want to give up at all. So whatever leg it just chomped on there, obviously the dog still has feeling in its extremities. And if it's able to move as far as it's moved from this morning, my thoughts were that it wasn't really going to last for most of the day, but you'd be amazed. Tristan was telling me about a wild dog that he knew who had both and could feed. Senzo, I do think that this hyena is taking advantage of this injured wild dog to see if it can eat it, but I think this wild dog has a lot of gumption left. You can see it's the back right leg that's injured, but again, it still has all 3 legs that's usable, excuse me. You can see it's a very hungry dog. Obviously, it's difficult for it to hunt because the way that a dog hunts is very different from a cat. Its claws can't get caught in. You can see that it hurts to get down, but you can also see that by it standing up the way that it is, it's trying to make itself bigger, and the hyena is not taking that lightly at all. So the leg that the hyena bit earlier is the injured leg. So obviously now there's more displacement behavior going on here, where the hyena is pretending now to ignore the dog a little bit. Smelling, checking, but also keeping an eye on any sort of advantage it might be able to get. But that wild dog is keeping an eye as best as it can. I mean, that hyena has tens of kilograms, tens of pounds on that wild dog. But do you remember the sighting we had the other day where there was the whole pack of dogs? And that hyena was following it around, and they killed that little baby hyena. Ugh. Hello everyone, welcome to our action broadcast. I'm going to prelude this with saying that if you are a sensitive viewer, you're not going to want to watch this. If you are a viewer that enjoys strange interactions and unusual interactions in the bush, stay with us. We have another vehicle that's in the sighting with us, so you will hear it from time to time. I'm Noelle. I've got Senzo on camera. There we go. Hi, Senzo. We're going to go back now over to this hyena and this wild dog. Sorry about that, guys. I just don't want to miss anything with this sighting. This hyena is circling this injured wild dog. This wild dog's been injured for several days now. Watch. The back right leg is the injured leg. We believe it was injured from a lion, and we do think that this hyena is trying to gain some sort of advantage to kill and eat this wild dog. Hyenas are one of the few predators that will actively hunt other predators. These sounds are absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So for those of you that might just be joining us on this action broadcast on whatever platform you're on, the African wild dog is not related to a domesticated dog. It's also known as an African painted wolf. That hyena is much bigger, much bigger than that wild dog. Oscar, you're curious to know where the pack is. Oscar, the pack has left this dog. Usually packs are very good at keeping injured ones with, but this one is injured enough that it really can't keep up with that pack. So that pack has left, and they are busy hunting. They came to visit past this side late last night / early this morning. But unfortunately, it's to the detriment of the pack if they stick in this one area, because they won't be able to hunt properly. I've got another vehicle. You'll hear it. You'll hear the sound just behind us, who's coming to join us. We do share this property with other lodges. Amy, you are so right. It is ruthless, and it is part of life. And Amy, I'm glad you're enjoying it in the same way that I'm enjoying it, which is I actually have goosebumps. And I don't necessarily want the hyena to get the wild dog, but the hyena's job is to take out the old, the weak, and the sick. And unfortunately, this wild dog happens to be one of those. Sorry, just excuse the noise behind me. I've just got another vehicle that's come through. I'm just busy filming live for all of you on this action broadcast at the moment. I am going to have to reposition the vehicle a little bit better. Senzo can also see a little bit of a better viewing. So if you just give me a second or two, we're not going to miss too much action. We will move around for you, that's for sure. We're just going to push our nose down a little bit more. And see if we can get a little bit of a different glance for you. And as I say that, it looks as if the hyena... Gee, strain dog, you're curious, why not say the dog? Everyone, this is wild. These are wild animals. These are not pets. We do not interfere. We just are lucky enough to see wildlife doing what wildlife does. Human interference in most circumstances of wildlife is not for the better. We have a lot of emotions that go through a scenario like this, or any sort of scenario where you have a tough thing happening, but it is not necessarily for the better. The hyena's job is to eat, but its job is also to take out the old, the weak, and the sick of any sort of species. And although it is heart-wrenching with this wild dog, there's nothing wrong with what's happening here. So it's very hard to detach ourselves as humans with the emotional side of things. It is very, very difficult, but unfortunately that is something we have to do in a scenario like this. And then we have to appreciate the fact that both of these species that we're currently with are allowing us to view them. So the reason why the hyena moved a little bit now has to do with that vehicle that came past us, and then a little bit with me as well, positioning my car. Was just a lot of noise. So unfortunately for us, we have interfered a titch with this scenario. It couldn't be helped. Unfortunately, I needed to move away from the road so that that vehicle could carry on. And this hyena is now debating whether or not it's going to go back. A hyena is very tenacious with the way that they hunt and the way that they harry their prey. So I do think he's going to go back. John, you're curious to know, are there any lions around? John, there's lions that aren't, as the crow flies, too far from us, but the pride that's there is not a pride that usually comes down this far south. If the lions were to come again, then they would definitely kill this wild dog, but they wouldn't eat it. If this hyena kills the wild dog, it will eat it. So this hyena is now deciding if it is worth to stay and try and finish off this wild dog, or if it's going to move away for now. I have a feeling that its choice is going to be to move off for now and then wait. I do think that that's what's going to happen. So unfortunately, the noise levels, as well as the dog's ability to chase off that predator, has, even in its state, has made it so this hyena is sort of taking a breather and taking a break. It's actually not that far from us at the moment. It's just on our left-hand side, and it's busy listening and investigating and deciding. It's a male hyena. So hyenas live in clans of females with young. The males are more nomadic, as it were. And he's going to move off a little bit. There we go. Now again, I know it's a very difficult sighting that we just had, but I cannot even begin to describe to you. I've been guiding for just over a decade, and I've never seen something like this. I've seen bits that are very similar to this, but I've never seen something like this. So this is an extremely exceptional, albeit harrowing, sighting. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for the action broadcast. I do appreciate you coming in and viewing this amazing sighting with us. There's our dog there. So please continue to follow us along other channels, YouTube, or follow us on Twitter with more questions or comments. #SafariLive. Okay, everyone, we're back. We're here. Our hyena has moved off a little bit. I don't know if while we're still here, if this hyena is going to come back. Senzo and I are going to be sitting with this dog for a little bit. We're going to do some filming. I didn't want any of you to miss that sighting. I know for some of you it was probably very difficult, but I also know for a lot of you it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing to see. So I'm here. I'm open to any comments, any questions you have about anything that happened, and we're very open about talking about every aspect. No matter how difficult or how hard or even slightly, I don't want to use the word enjoyable, but it is an amazing, intricate little sighting that we had there. I mean, just completely out of this world. Again, I still have goosebumps. Seeing things like this is very, very rare. All right. While we are letting you all think and while we are busy checking on everything, let's go over to Tristan. I think, if I heard correctly, he's got something that we've been looking for all afternoon.
Hosana, who's not by himself either. He is being accompanied by over, I would say, maybe close to 60, 70 elephants, and it seems as though there is another leopard here with him. I haven't seen the other leopard just yet. Sounds like the other leopard is just somewhere close by, but as we were kind of driving through with these elephants, another vehicle came to join from the other side, and these guys are sandwiched in amongst all of the elephants at the moment, so it's super exciting. I think it's Hosana. I'm not 100% sure. I've only just seen his back, but it looks like him, and I think the other one, from what the guys say, looks like apparently Tundi is also here, which is really interesting. But either way, it's super exciting. Like I say, we had elephants absolutely everywhere. They came down to Chitwa to drink, and then as they were coming back, they all kind of huddled together and were making a lot of noise, and the other vehicle came in and they managed to find these two leopards just relaxing in amongst all of these elephants, which is absolutely phenomenal. But you can see Hosana is completely relaxed. He's not worried. at all. He's taking it very easy at this stage. He's having a really good nap. The other leopard, like I say, I'm not 100% sure what she's doing, but it sounds like, like I said, that the other guide says it's Tundi. But maybe what we should do is just reposition ourselves and go and have a look at which other leopard we've got. While Hosana is so sleepy, let's maybe just check up on which other leopard there is. We can also show you all the elephants that are behind us, because there is a mountain of them as well at the back. But how exciting is this? This is so cool. It's amazing what happens at Chitwa Dam. Like I say, you'd think on a sort of overcast, cold day like today that we'd have a situation where these animals wouldn't really be coming down to the dam to be able to drink. They would rather have a situation where they would kind of be sitting in somewhere where it's nice and cool. There we go. There's the other leopard over there. I can see it now. So I'm going to quickly just go into that direction and have a look. All the elephants have gone to the south of us a little bit and have moved off slightly. So I wonder if maybe, just maybe, they're not going to come into this area. Let's go around this section here. This should be quite interesting. Is it? No, it looks like shadow to me. It doesn't look like Tundi. It looks like shadow from what I can see. So that's not a surprise with the amount of movement that Shadow's been having. You can hear the elephants in the distance. The amount of movement that Shadow's been doing over the last little bit and into Little Gari, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But it does. Is it Shadow? It looks like Shadow to me. It doesn't look like Tundi at all. Oh, she looks as though she's going to get comfy. Are you bored of Hosana? So I wonder if we're going to have a situation where Hosana is just going to follow Shadow around again for the next little bit. He seems as though he keeps latching on to all of his siblings. He spends time with Tumba, he spent a lot of time with Tundi, until I think Tundi gave him a send-off with, now that she's got a new cub, she's not going to be too interested in having some company around her in the form of a young male. But now he's latching on to the other sister in the form of Shadow, and she seems to be fairly tolerant. You can see she's curled up, she's sleeping, Hosana's lying flat. There is in no way any aggression towards each other. There's no way chasing each other, and I wonder if Shadow's cub is not also somewhere in this general vicinity. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if both of these leopards were here with Hosana. He, like I say, seems to follow them around, and I'm not sure yet. I haven't decided whether it's because he knows he can get food from these older leopards, or if it's a situation, no, it's definitely Shadow now that I can see her, so, or if it's a situation where he's just craving some sort of company. You can see there's actually an Ellie just in the background behind Shadow now, just starting to come through. They're going to start appearing from the left-hand side. So it's absolutely insane to see all of this together. There's the Ellie on the back left, Chitwa on behind that, and it's just absolutely amazing. Now, James, you agree with me, and you say that this is Shadow as well. So yes, it definitely is Shadow. Now that she's looked at us, it's most certainly her. I believe Tundi was at some stage was going towards the den this morning, so I would have been surprised if she had been here. And like I say, it seems as though Hosana has been following Shadow around over the last little bit. It seems as though he's been with her for 3 or 4 days, kind of in the same areas where she's been, and I wonder if it's just, a kind of thing where, like I say, that he's craving a little bit of companionship, or he knows that these older females are incredibly experienced and they know where to find food, and so he follows them around to be able to get food from them from now. So it's an interesting thing, but amazing to see. It's really very, very cool, and it's amazing that it's all from the same lineage that we're seeing. So we're seeing, Shadow and Tundi and Hosana all kind of in the same places, Tumba as well. It's so cool, and we have once again got an epic afternoon that's going to unfold. It'll be amazing to watch the interactions that take place, not only between the two leopards but the elephants as well. Now, James, who has always got to contribute to the drives, has decided that he's come up with the trump card this afternoon and has something incredibly special on Bushwalk.
Well, Benjamin Bunny is quite special. Not quite as special as Hosana and his sister Shadow, but still very impressive, and the best part is that this little thing is not running from us. Now, what he's eating, or she's eating, can't tell from here, is little pieces of grass seed, and she knows we're here. I'm just going to call her a she for the sake of it. And she hasn't run away because we've stopped approaching. Now, the hair, there she goes. She's come out of her form quite early. Now, the form is what this little thing lives in. And it's a sort of little hollowed out piece like the bit she's gone into there. All right, let's go straight back to Buffelshoek Dam now. That drama of the hyena and the wild dog is reaching episode 2.
I'm so excited for everyone that you got Hosana and Shadow in one sighting. Tristan is our elephant whisperer. The other vehicles have left this sighting, and Senzo and I are sitting here very quietly. So part of what our jobs are to do is to not only show you safari and have you be on game drive with us, but part of what we also do is we document the happenings of what's going on. So again, if you're very sensitive, this might not be for you, but there's still very interesting behavior happening here. So this hyena has circled around, the dog has growled at it, it has started to sort of lick up bits of soil near the dog in an attempt to try and show the dog that it's pretending to not be interested in it. However, that being said, we all know that this hyena is very interested in this dog. The outcome of a scenario like this, I couldn't exactly tell you. There's a few things that could happen. There's a breeding herd of elephants that was at the dam earlier that's not far from us. Now, elephants usually don't pay huge much attention to dogs unless they're in a very big pack, or into hyenas unless they're in a very big clan. But if there's enough squealing and yelping, you might see that they might get perturbed by it and come back and chase them off. The other thing that could happen is the pack could come back. They could hear what's going on with those very large ears that they have if they're close enough. And if they can hear any of the distress cries, they will come back and assist if they're within hearing distance. The other thing that could happen is more hyenas come. Rose, you're asking a really interesting question. Why is the hyena hesitant? So Rose, one of the main reasons why the hyena is hesitant is because the wild dog is a predator and has sharp teeth. Its jaws are not as are not as strong as the hyenas, but it's still a predator and it's still able to nip and to bite. And so if the hyena goes in and tries to, let's say, finish off this wild dog, and misjudges its approach, and the dog bites it and injures it enough where that wound on the hyena could become septic or could possibly make the hyena not able to function within its environment, that's an issue for the hyena. And so that's why the hyena is hesitant. Another possibility as well is that in general, dogs tend to bed down for the night, and in general, hyenas tend to move around at night or sort of when it's cooler. So the hyena might also just be waiting for it to be darker. The hyena could also just be deciding whether it's really worth the effort to go after this dog as opposed to go look for something else. Now just listen there. Do you see when the dog growls at it, how it looks away and stops and is really thinking about what is it going to do? I've seen this with lions as well, with something like a honey badger, and I've seen lions kill a honey badger, but the growl and the teeth structure of the honey badger is sometimes just too much for the lion. So you can see this hyena is now moving off. It might move off forever, but again, knowing hyenas as well as I do, they are curious and persistent, so it might come back. It's just biding its time. I think while we're waiting to see what happens here, let's link back to Tristan with his beautiful leopards that I know you all love to see.
Well, indeed, our leopard is beautiful, but all curled up in a ball. It's, like I was saying earlier, a cold, overcast, grey afternoon, and the wind is picking up, and it's starting to get cooler and quite chilly, and that's why I think our leopard's all rolled up in a tight ball. It seems as though Shadow has been feeding really well lately. I've seen a number of updates on her killing baby impalas, and so she seems to be catching a lot of food, and maybe she's had a meal at some point yesterday, and now it's just time to rest. But it's really interesting to me, her behavior, and both her and Hosana, because she has got her back completely turned to where Hosana is. Hosana is lying behind us, so if she was worried about that male, she would be a lot different in her approach to him. She would have turned, she would have been facing him, she would have then been quite uncomfortable and try and make her way out as soon as he was not looking at her. But in this situation, she seems completely non-perturbed by his presence, and it really doesn't seem to care at all that he's around. I suppose at the end of the day, he's not a big male, And so she doesn't have to worry too much. What astounds me about this whole thing, though, is that you would think a female with a cub, particularly, Shadow, who's had a number of her cubs that have been killed by various different predators, would be far more defensive of her cub and would try and chase this young male away. But for some reason, she's allowed it, and the cub and Hosana seem to have no aggression between each other either, and they seem to be fine together, which is absolutely astounding. Paul, are you wondering if I think Shadow and Hosana realize that they are from the same lineage and that they are siblings? Paul, I don't know. I mean, there's obviously senses in a leopard that go far beyond our understanding, and we often think that we are the most intelligent beings out here, and yes, we do display a lot of intelligence, but I think there's a lot deeper understanding from these animals than we really think. So I would imagine that maybe there's some sort of chemical signature within their urine that maybe is recognizable to them. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems more to me the fact that this is a young male leopard that really is not displaying any aggression to her cub, not displaying any aggression to her, and that's why she seems to be allowing it. You probably find the first interaction there was a bit of aggression that took place, but since then, because they've come across each other so many times, it almost seems as though they're just kind of allowing it to happen, and there's really no issue. You can actually see there's an elephant now coming straight up the path almost towards Shadow, so maybe the Ellies will get involved and start actually kind of going after them. You can just see its feet in the background there and its trunk moving, so I'm pretty sure we're going to have a situation where these Ellies are going to move up. There's another big female coming past as well, so it's going to be a situation where we're going to have lots of things all happening at once. Although the thing about the Ellies is that their direction seems to be moving away from us rather than actually straight towards us, and so I think Shadow will be just fine. But back to the sort of recognizing, maybe there is an element, a chemical signature, like I say, or some sort of vocalizing or something that they're able to communicate, that they're in some way related. I'm not sure. I think it's more just a behavioral aspect that allows them to be more sort of tolerable of this male. What interests me, though, more than anything about this whole process has been Tingana over this sort of last few months. Tingana, to me, is not nearly as aggressive nor as prominent as what we saw him a few months ago. Now, I know a lot of people are going to probably raise their eyebrows and think, what am I talking about? But I've been watching Tingana and looking for signs of him, and I've noticed over the last few months that his appearance and his sort of amount of, I don't know, his visibility, let's call it, on Djuma has decreased, and he seems to be spending less and less time on the western part of Djuma, more and more towards the central parts. Now, that could be because Tundi has obviously given birth and he's concentrating in that area, but I have a funny feeling that he is being severely pressured by a number of different males at the moment, particularly this new male that's made an appearance over the last few weeks. He was on Djuma 2 days ago. Subsequent to that, yesterday morning when Noel saw Tingana and other guests saw Tingana who I spoke to, they told me that he's got a heavy limp on him at the moment, and I wonder if that male didn't have a clash with Tingana at some point. There might also be pressure from quarantine from the eastern side, and I think Tingana is starting to feel the pinch a little bit, and his movements are starting to get smaller and smaller, much like what happened with Mvula when he started to go into that period where he was starting to be pushed out. And it worries me that that's the case, because at the end of the day, Tundi's cub's survival hinges on Tingana being able to push these other males away, and his reactions to Hosana seems to also be very light at the moment. Even though Hosana is lifting his tail and spraying, Tingana keeps kind of almost just not worrying about it. I haven't seen Tingana vocalizing. I haven't seen him going into areas where Hosana has been spending time and really kind of setting an example and really establishing himself as the dominant male. It's been really interesting to watch, and maybe it's just because we haven't spent that much time with Tingana, but his tracks certainly aren't in as many places as we thought they would be, and is a situation where it seems as though he's not moving in nearly as big a territory as he was before. Now, I believe that you guys can see that she's got a little cut on her paw, which doesn't surprise me. I suppose she's had a couple rough days. She's had Hosana hanging around. She's had the wild dogs chase her up into a small tree where she had a kill, and she was trying to kind of balance herself in a tree for a while. So there might be a little cut from the dogs maybe nipping at her, maybe hyenas, or she went up a tree and gave herself a little cut, or you never know, maybe she's even had a little bit of a scrap with Hosana himself. Hosana looks absolutely perfect. When I drove past him just now, he didn't look as though he has got a single scratch on him, as opposed to Shadow. So I don't know if they've been fighting. Also, you never know, maybe this female and the male that were mating, that have moved into this area over the last few days, maybe there's been a bit of scrap with them as well. It's always a situation that these things can happen. Whenever there's a new male around, it's always a concern for all of our females that have cubs, because ultimately new males will try and kill the cubs to bring the females back into estrus. And that male and female that we're seen mating on Djuma are not only in the heart of Tundi's territory, but they've now pushed south. I believe today we're seen on Hofmann's, which is the heart of Shadow's territory too. So it's interesting. Maybe that means that's why Shadow is so far east at the moment at Chitwa Dam, and why Tundi is pushing more northeast into Djuma itself. Anyway, it's an interesting time, and the dynamics of leopards are constantly changing on Djuma. But while we kind of contemplate how this is all going to play out, let's go across to James Hendry, who's probably contemplating where he's going to be using his lower limbs to send him and in which direction he would like to go.
I am contemplating dung. Marvellous. This is warthog dung. Fairly fresh. I haven't touched it to test its warmth, on account of the fact that the warthog is an omnivorous creature and therefore will have unpleasantly smelling dung. Can't smell it here at the moment, which is a good thing. Then around this dung we have got some trap jaw ants. Trap jaw. There, here, Lumpy. Can you see? Wait, let me see if I can clear a space, because we're him to try and film these things. These ants have got there's one in the middle of the dung. They've got these jaws that snap shut more powerfully than any other creature in the world, as far as I'm aware, much more powerfully than, say, a crocodile, per millimeter or per, what would we say, per gram of mass. Trap jaw ants. You can't actually see them very nicely here, but they've got these two sort of obviously front-facing jaws. There we go, there's one. And they're long, and they open very wide. And then the trap jaw ant slams them shut on whatever it's trying to catch. Isn't that nice? All right, let's quickly have a look at the dam. We've come down towards Twin Dams. There's nothing here, as far as I can tell. I just want to see if the little grebes are around, aka dab chicks. As the light starts to fade on this rather cloudy, leaden-skied day. Now, the other thing, there are two interesting things here. The first interesting thing is the smell that's coming from somewhere. It must be coming off the dam. But it's a very odd kind of, I guess it's a little bit like a smelling pea soup. And then Lily, you're wondering, this is not my second thought, I'll share that with you now, but you're wondering if it's trap jaw or trap door. It's trap jaw, as in the mouth, trap jaw ant. And that has distracted me from my second thought. Oh yes, I remember now. We've had quite a lot of rain this year, but clearly still not enough to do anything like fill these dams. And so we'll obviously have to have a fairly sustained period of rain, and also it speaks to how sort of the paucity of the groundwater, if you like. So the groundwater is obviously still very low from the drought we had, not last year, but the year before that. So quite interesting stuff over here. Let's carry on now. We're going to continue up towards the north. We have had lots of elephant tracks heading this direction. No signs of those mating leopards, I'm afraid. They haven't come back onto Djuma. They weren't around here this morning. They were on Hofmann's, which is a reserve to the south and to the west of us. Now, we are going to go back to the magnificent sighting of Hosana and Shadow. I'm very jealous, so do enjoy it with Tristan.
Well, Noel, I'm about to make you more jealous because not only has Hosana got his head up, but it also appears as though Hosana has got a nice meal. Whether he's taken it from Shadow or he's managed to get it himself, there you can see a duiker dangling from the tree. And I actually didn't even notice it just now. It was a situation where I kind of drove in. I was so excited to see Hosana, I forgot completely that there might even be that possibility. But it explains why both of them are sitting so relaxed and not really kind of moving around too much. I have a funny feeling that this is Shadow's kill, that Hosana has maybe come in and out-muscled her and taken it for himself. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. He's getting to that size and that age now where he is going to start kind of bossing his older siblings around, particularly the girls, and being able to take things for himself, or maybe she'll just allow it to share with him. I don't know. At the end of the day, though, this is obviously Hosana's area that he spends a lot of time, so it's possible he did kill it and then commotion has caused Shadow to come in and have a look. That is entirely possible, and we can't write that off either. But either way, it's exciting for us. It means that I'm sure he'll be here tomorrow morning still. It's not really that much food there. It's probably enough for him to kind of eat through the night and be lounging about in this particular area tomorrow morning. Whether Shadow stays, I'm not quite sure. It might mean that she starts to move off, but it'll be interesting. I would imagine that tomorrow morning they should still be in this particular section. But he's looking absolutely magnificent. I haven't seen Hosana really nicely since I've been back from leave. I just had him briefly the other day crossing into Little Gowrie, and it was kind of a little glimpse, and then since then it's been very slim pickings with Hosana, but he's starting to look really big. He's got this little dewlap that's starting to grow now. It's amazing actually to see it. You kind of almost have that feeling of being quite proud as you watch these guys grow up and see them blossoming into an incredibly big, beautiful male leopard that has really found his way in this particular section. And I really do hope that he ends up being somewhere close by, if not dominant over the Djuma area itself. It'll be amazing if he does stay. He's such a beautiful individual and quite a character at the end of the day. Him and Tamba have a quite special place, and I would imagine if it happened, the two of them. I know it won't ever happen, and this is complete utter dreaming, but imagine if the two of them did form a coalition together and we had a Tamba Hosana coalition. It would be quite something to watch the two of those guys walking around. Of course, like I say, it won't happen, but at the moment they seem to enjoy spending time together, so who knows, maybe we will see them more frequently as partners in crime. But you can see he's very relaxed, and the reason why he's so relaxed is because he's got a kill here. He doesn't really need to go anywhere. And of course, Shadow is the same. They're both just sitting, probably eyeing this out. That's why she keeps kind of lifting her head every now and then and gazing in this direction. It's because the kill is here. She's just watching to see if Hosana maybe has moved off, so that she can move in and be able to then feed off the carcass itself. Now, unfortunately, there are a number of other cars that do want to head into this area, and so we really can't spend too much longer with them, so we're probably going to leave them where they are now. It's been absolutely wonderful to see them. I would like to have stayed longer, but there is a number, like I say, of other cars. So while we head on out, let's go back across to James and see what he's pottering about with now on his bushwalk.
Rexon has found us the most sweet little sighting you could ever hope to have. It is a baby Wahlberg's eagle up in the Wahlberg's eagle's nest. Completely safe from other predators, except maybe some nasty gymnogenes. But it's tiny. It looks like probably about, I'm going to say 6 inches long. And it keeps popping its head up. Oh, don't go down, sleep now. It's a tiny little thing. It's got no proper feathers on it, only down. And now you can't see it because it hasn't lifted it. There we go. Look at it. Isn't it cute? Liam is now, of course, holding his breath because the shot is so long that if he exhales, you will almost certainly lose sight of the bird. Don't breathe, Liam. It's all for the cause. Isn't that wonderful? A new little life. And last year, the pale form He's given up now, you see. The pale form pair that lives up near our camp, they didn't give birth. They never give birth, really, do they? They're birds. They lay eggs. They didn't successfully raise a chick last year, and we didn't see any chick at all last year in their nest. And I don't know if these guys did either. He's sitting right up now. Oh, look at him. Tiny little eagle. That is just magnificent. You're walking around there, strutting his stuff, like he owns the world. I wonder where his parents are. I hope not far. Looks like he's looking for them, hoping they'll bring him something nice to eat. A lizard, perhaps, or a small rodent. How very special. Okay, we really do need now to get moving towards home. The light is fading, the clouds are coming in, and Tristan is just down there with the last glimpse of the two leopards.
Well, our two leopards are fast asleep, James Henry. They are taking it very easy, and I hope this bodes well for the Friday TV show that we will be doing for Big Cat Week. That it will be at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So I'm hoping that these two will stick around, because it will be lovely for James, who's going to be hosting from this area, I would imagine. And maybe these two will appear for him. I know James has a very soft spot for Hosana, and the more time that James gets to spend with him, the better. So I do hope that he does appear for James, and that they have a magic time with him all around Chitwa Dam, and hopefully Shadow also arrives with the little cub. Now, while we've been sitting here, I said that I was going to be leaving shortly, but some of the other guys very kindly decided that they will pull out and leave the sighting before us, so we can spend a little bit longer. So we have to be very thankful from Peter, who always helps us as much as he can. And while we've been sitting here, there's been some impalas alarm calling behind me, so I wonder if maybe just Shadow's cub is not somewhere close by as well. And if not Shadow's cub, you never know. Tingana wasn't too far from here yesterday, so maybe he's arriving on the scene at some point too. And you can never write off Tumba in this area as well, so worth maybe just sitting for another few minutes just to see what happens. You can see he's popped his head up now, and I wonder if that's maybe because of the fact that he's maybe heard these impalas alarm calling as well in the distance, and that's why he's just kind of poked his head up. But you can see that dewlap that is forming that I was talking about earlier. That skin is starting to hang a little bit, and he's growing up day by day, isn't he? He's starting to get very bulky as well. His shoulder area is quite large, and so he looks absolutely great. Noan, I think it was. I didn't get the name very well there. Sorry, Nikki. You're wondering if Hosana should be called a sub-adult now? Yes, indeed. Milan. There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, Hosana is a sub-adult now, so he is not an adult, and he's not a cub anymore. He's most definitely a sub-adult. He's at that age where he has now basically kind of, even if Kruger was still around, he would have left Kruger by now. He's now in that nomadic phase of his life where he's still utilizing a bit of the natal territory in order to kind of set himself up, and then from there he'll move around a little bit. What's been interesting with him in particular is that he has not distributed as far as I would have thought, and it's because of the behavior of Tingana. Tingana is not pushing him, and we've seen him and Tingana together, and it's only when Tingana starts pushing him will he then start to move on anywhere. The other problem that he has is that there's not really anywhere to go at the Flat Rock Male on Londolozi. He's got his other brother in the form of Konuma to the south, he's quarantined to the east, and so he's got kind of not really many options. So sitting tight where he is now on Little Gari and Djuma and Chitwa is the best place for him, because at the end of the day, as long as Dad's being tolerant, he's not having to fight with any of these other male leopards, and he can then try and wing it and get bigger and stronger before he moves on. Kristen, you're wondering if Hosana is rewriting the leopard manual. Well, I suppose to a degree it's been really interesting watching his behavior. He's certainly the first young male leopard that I've seen as social as what he is. Him and Tumba also seems not to care at all with all these other females. Not quite as much as Hosana, but it's still, he kind of hangs around with the females too. But he definitely is far different to a lot of the young males that I've seen, and his distribution has not taken place that quickly. Normally you'll see when a young male loses his mom or is no longer with his mom that he starts to leave really quickly and is no longer seen after a few months, whereas Hosana has been here most of the year. He looks completely comfortable, doesn't look like he's getting any pressure at this stage, and so who knows, maybe he is going to rewrite the books. And that's the best thing about being out here, watching these safaris, being a part of this and sharing all of this with you guys live, is that we follow these cats and we follow these characters and these animals, and we learn things that maybe books can't tell us. I mean, each animal is unique. Each animal will adapt to its surroundings and adapt to its situation in its own unique way. And sometimes books just aren't always the answer. Sometimes the animals don't read these books, they don't know what rules are, and they will do things the way that they feel needs to be done in order to survive. Now, Nikki, I didn't hear you, I'm afraid. If you can repeat that again for me, sorry. So, Palin, you asking if leopards can write. Well, yes, I suppose if Hosana was rewriting his book, it would be a requirement to write. Maybe he's got an app where he can just dictate and it just writes for him, or he's going to employ the services of James Henry, who we know is an author in his own right, and get him to write the book. And write a book for him. And did you say you'd read anything that he wrote? Well, are we talking about James now, or are we talking about Hosana? Either way, I suppose it would be entertaining if you combine the two of them together. I feel like James's wit with Hosana's goofiness would probably combine to make an incredibly good book to read. So maybe that's what we should do, is The Tales of Hosana by James R.A. Henry and co-authored by Hosana himself. But it is amazing to see him. Like I say, even though he's sleeping and he's not up to too much, it's been an absolute pleasure to spend time with him this afternoon. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. But we are going to have to move now. Unfortunately, we really have pushed it a little bit. And so while we kind of leave this area, let's go back across to Noel and the drama of the wild dog as it unfolds into the darkness of the night.
Hi everyone. So the hyena has moved away, and it hasn't come back, and our wild dog is resting as best as it possibly can. We had one more vehicle that came to join us in the sighting, and he was saying that several days ago, 2-3 days ago, this wild dog was just a little bit farther north from where we are, and that he thinks it was the same hyena, was also there sort of near it. So this hyena is aware of this dog enough. We have been sitting here quietly, and he hasn't really moved. There's been a hippo in the water that's been rolling around and busy getting ready to move out. And Senzo and I were thinking that it's possible that he might move this way and sort of investigate this wild dog, but we're not quite sure. We're doing our best to be as unobtrusive as possible and as quiet as possible, and it seems as if this dog is okay with where we are positioned and how quiet we're being, and we're not interfering with him too much. We've also given him enough of a distance that if anything more were to start harassing him again, we're not interfering. The thing that happened earlier, as opposed to anything else, and again, we try not to interfere at any point, but unfortunately the movement of the vehicles had a slight effect. But he, as you know, he did come back and then just has decided for now that this is not where he wants to be. There's our gray heron that has flown into the scene. Kristen, you're curious to know, with this injury, what would it be able to catch and feed on? It would eat things like grasshoppers, and it would eat things like possibly lizards. Right now, what's keeping it alive is the water. So I believe humans can go up to 3 weeks without having food as long as they have water. But our metabolism is not as high as a wild dog's, so the wild dog has less time for it. But again, getting back to the story that Tristan was telling me about the wild dog that had the 2 back legs that stopped functioning and just the front legs, he was saying that wild dog ate grasshoppers and lived for quite a while, grasshoppers and lizards. So there's a possibility. Also, I want to just add in here as well, if the pack does decide to come back to this dog at all and check on it, they haven't been calling. They were calling to each other the other morning, but they haven't been calling the couple of times I've seen this dog today. They had eaten something, they would regurgitate for him, which would help. But I don't know if that's just something that could happen. I don't know if it's going to happen. That pack, the Investac and Bali breakaways with that collared male from the Angama pack, they have a very large traverse area. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head exactly the hectareage or acreage size of it, but it's quite large. So it's also important that they move enough within their territory to keep themselves safe and keep away from things like lion and large clans of hyena and anything else that could possibly injure them. And also, again, because their metabolism is so high, they have to constantly be feeding. So I was actually pretty convinced that this was going to be the last day for the dog. But then after the interaction with the hyena today, and as well as the fact that it's made it down towards the water, I'm going to start agreeing more with Rexon, who thinks that this dog's going to have a better chance. And then I was also thinking about it. My sister, when I was a little kid, my older sister had a 3-legged dog, and that 3-legged dog had a very good life and was fine. So I think that maybe if this injury is new enough, it's just a bit painful. I think as the pain starts to decrease, if this dog is still alive, that it might be able to carry on. You never know. Swapna, you're curious to know if wild dogs recover from injuries given time. Swapna, in my time as a guide, I've seen wildlife come back from what we as humans would consider a debilitating injury. And I've seen it time and time again, specifically more with lions, but I think I've just been my experiences have just been more with them in the injury point of view. So I do think that with time, that the possibility of him getting through this injury is a possibility. The problem of from what I can see, I'm going to use my shoulder as an example. It looks like the whole thing is possibly broken at the bottom and dislocated from the top. So every time it tries to move, or like the hyena was chewing on the paw earlier, it's hurting the whole leg. So it needs to either, this is going to sound awful, it needs to either like come off and sort of heal, which is very difficult for it to happen, or it needs to be able to move and function without constantly hitting that leg. But because the back legs are so long, it's very difficult for that to happen with the type of terrain we have. So the possibility of continuing or aggravating the injury or possibly re-injuring it is higher. So I think if in a week he is still alive and has not re-injured the injury, it's more of a possibility. But the next sort of 3 or 4 days will let us know for sure. But yeah, I mean, everything's 50-50. You never really know. He's changing positions a bit. All right, so we are only going to stay with this dog for another minute or two, and then we're going to leave him be and just let him try and get through the night. Let's head on over to James, who wants to lighten up our situation from our rather harrowing experience that we're dealing with now.
It does sound rather harrowing. I am, as a result, lying in the verdant pastures underneath a Balanites magami tree, or torchwood tree. The reason I'm lying under this tree is that the elephants have cleared it of obstructions, and they've fertilized it with their dung, rendering it a lovely meadow of green and comfortable grasses. No doubt filled with ticks, which are currently climbing into various parts of my body without my knowledge, such that tomorrow I will wake up tearing at my own skin from the itch. But it will have been worth it, for it is very pleasant to lie on the soft and verdant grasses of the summer here in the Sabi sands underneath the Balanites tree that the elephants have specially cleared for that purpose. Well done, Liam. That was a very nice 360-degree turn. I know many of you are now probably feeling quite dizzy, possibly nauseous, but that's okay. On we go. We've had quite a long walk through this little block, and it is... Oh, I feel a bit lightheaded. Hang on a second. Right, I feel okay now. Okay, we're going to continue down through here. I think I sat up too quickly. Tristan is now at Chitwa Waterhole. Let's head across and see if there's anything interesting there for him.
Well, we did have 2 black crakes, but both of them have pulled a sneaky and gone behind that little bank. Oh, there we go. They've come back out again. Aren't they the coolest little things? I love these black crakes with their bright red legs and yellow beaks and jet black body. And there we go, wading into the water, looking for a little snack. They've been moving around quite a lot on the edge of the banks here, looking for all kinds of food. Now, are you going to call for us? Can you hear their call? It's a very strange call. They have this amazing call that they've got. It doesn't sound like a little bird making it. I'll play it for you because it's probably a bit far with the wind today for it to actually come through clearly. So I'll play it on my phone. So here we go. So that's the call that they make. It's a very cool call. And it makes me always smile with that call because it reminds me of going fly fishing with my grandfather at the dam that we used to go fly fishing at when he was teaching my brother and myself how to fish. That bird used to be always very close by and it always used to make this call. So when I hear it, it reminds me of fly fishing and good times. And so I really do enjoy hearing its call, and hearing it now is a little bit kind of nostalgic. So that was quite nice. And look at how big its feet are in relation to its body. And that's just to spread its weight so that it can walk over little lilies and various other vegetation on the edge of water when it's looking around for food. And the colors are absolutely stunning, as Nikki has just suggested in my ear. They are amazing. I love these little birds, and generally quite shy. You don't get to see too much of them. They tend to kind of move around and you don't really get to see them, and they go behind thickets. But this is being a very obliging little fella, or lady should I say, and depending on which one it is, and is just kind of going along the edge of the water and doing its business. Absolutely amazing. Now, as Murphy would have it, I believe Tingana is right there with those 2 leopards as well. So our assumption that another leopard was around was correct. I believe he's just on the little Gari side, and he's just sitting on the little Gari side of the cut line, and it's not very clear visual at all. So we're not going to be able to go back because of the amount of people that are there. But anyway, still amazing to know that he's there, and maybe tomorrow morning he'll still be there with the others. Now, there's 3 other birds that I want to just point out because I also really love these guys. So Ferg, on my right hand side here, just over a little bit further to the right, you'll see 3 birds that are basically sitting on the edge of the water, and they are busy kind of wagging their tails. And these guys are called wagtails, and so they move around. This particular ones are pied wagtails, and they move around, and you'll see that they just bounce their tail as they go. And so they bob their head and bounce their tail, and there was 3 of them in total, and they were all kind of doing a little display there for a second. So it was quite nice to see, and I like these guys. I don't know why, they always just seem as though they're very busy. There we go, up onto the bit of dung, and then the tail starts to wag, and a bit of a song as well. Yes, I suppose it's that time of the day. It's a Sunday serenade for the other bird that is with them. But it's really cool to watch them. They kind of fly around quite quickly, and like I say, lots of tail movement, lots of head movement. It's all very busy with these guys. But Chitwa Dam once again has delivered for us this afternoon. It's been absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, with all the elephants that came down just now, they chased away all my pratincoles that I wanted to show you, because there was probably, I would say, between 30 and 40 pratincoles all over this section, and the elephants came down and all the pratincoles flew away, which is not ideal. I was hoping that they would stay around because they're not a bird we see all that often, and you kind of lice to see them and pick them up. And I looked if any of them were nesting. It didn't seem like it. It seemed as though everybody was just sitting around enjoying the cooler weather. What I was also hoping for with this cooler weather was maybe our terns to come back. So for those of you that weren't watching on Birding Big Day, we had 2 tern species here that were on the branch, and those of you that did watch Birding Big Day but did not see my update, is that I said that we had a certain species of tern, but there was actually 2 species there on the tree itself. One was a white-winged tern, and the other I have now forgotten altogether, which is because my brain is just mush and I don't know why I've forgotten, but I'll remember at some stage. I can see exactly what it looks like in my mind, but I've forgotten the name of it. I'll bring it up just now. But there was 2 different species, so for those of you that weren't watching or were watching and didn't get the update that I gave, there was actually 2 different species of tern there, which is very, very cool. The white-winged tern was the other species that I didn't mention on the day, so if you were watching, that was the different one, and it was the one that was sitting on the right-hand side of the tree, and then the other tern was on the left. And like I said, for the life of me, can't... Whiskered tern, there we go. That was the other one. The whiskered tern was the other one, and that was the one with the dark cap and the red beak, and then the one on the right side of the tree was a light cap and a dark black beak. Oh, there's a crocodile over there. Palin, you're wondering if the goose is still in the nest. Well, we'll probably have to get James's friend Sebastian Rombouille for his little drone piloting act to be able to see the goose on top of the nest. I haven't seen it today. Maybe it's the one that I think you're talking about, the one that's got on top that you can actually see its eggs, or you're maybe talking about the one that sits on this particular nest where the wagtails were. I haven't seen it today. Maybe it is still there, maybe it isn't, but like I say, the drone will probably be the best way to kind of see it at some point. So maybe we'll have to try and get him up and running at some stage and see if there are actually eggs in there in the future. Who knows? But at the moment I don't see anything. I don't see an Egyptian goose. Do you see one there, Ferg? No, I don't see one anywhere on that side. There we go. Ferg is saying no to me as well. Now, Vlad has disappeared. Our wagtails have disappeared. Our Egyptian goose has disappeared. And so I think that's our cue probably to start moving off away from Chitwa Dam and see what other little treats we can find as we start making our way home. It's been such an epic time here that I suppose there's not really much more we could ask for this afternoon, other than that we don't get rained on in our last few minutes as we start to head back home. But we are going to start meandering that way, and while we do that, I believe Noelle has probably got a similar idea, and as she is also mobile and moving probably slowly back towards camp, and let's see what she's busy with and where she's going to be heading for the rest of the afternoon.
Oh, Tristan, you know me too well. We sometimes share a brain. I am meandering back towards home, just checking a couple of spots I haven't yet checked this afternoon to see if anything wants to pop out. I'm super jealous of your double leopard sighting, and also super jealous for anyone else that got to see Tingana on the scene. It is difficult sometimes when we have to share sightings with other vehicles, but that being said, everyone needs a chance to see and experience what you all at home are experiencing. So let's see, what would I like to see on the way home? I don't know, I'm in a bit of a somber mood with our dog. It was a tough decision to go up to him, and the point of us getting up there was to do what we hope, and I think I mentioned it earlier, but I can't honestly remember, to do a story, because there is the hope that he will survive, and then we sort of get to catalog. And getting that interaction with the hyena, my wildlife guide viewing side of me is like, oh my goodness, that was so incredible. And then my human girly side of me that loves wild dogs is like, well, it's so sad. He's sitting there, he's cold, he misses his pack. But I do have hope. We always have hope. So yeah, so my somber mood is putting out somber vibes, so I don't really know if we're going to get anything on the way back. As you all know, the vibes you put out is what you bring back in. So I'm hoping for something, but we'll see. Oh, Mario, you are curious to know what is the Magnificent Seven that I was referring to earlier. Thank you very much for asking that. So you have the Big Five. The Big Five is lion, leopard, elephant, buffalo, and rhino. Sorry, I don't know why that one was escaping, and rhino. And the Big Five historically comes from the 5 most dangerous animals to hunt. They're now the 5 most enigmatic creatures that people want to see with their cameras in general. Now, the Magnificent Seven came about, I'm sure it's just someone with a really brilliant PR vibe, when cheetah and wild dog were either present on properties or relocated, because both those species being highly endangered species and species that were killed out for many different reasons, but a lot of it has to do with human encroachment. So there's been a lot of reintroduction of them. That turned into the Magnificent Seven. But that being said, I've also heard the Magnificent Seven having things like, if you have, say, the Big Five plus wild dog and hippo, Or there's Addo Elephant National Park that's down near, I think it's down near Port Elizabeth. It's one of the only national parks I haven't been to yet. I keep meaning to get down to. Their Magnificent Seven involves the great white shark, because part of the national park borders along the ocean, and you can go and see great white sharks there. So they've got the big five, and then I think they include something like cheetah and great white sharks, but I would have to triple check on that. But in general, so in the area that we function in the Lowveld, the Magnificent Seven is the big five plus cheetah and wild dog. So the only one of the Magnificent Seven that I haven't been able to show you on camera is cheetah, and I am jonesing so badly for a cheetah. I have not seen cheetah in months and months and months. And dear friends of mine that are still working on the property that I worked on before I came here have tiny little cheetah cubs, and they keep showing me pictures, sending them through and saying, ha ha, and I send them not very nice emojis back. Oh, look, a waterbuck. Maybe we'll go up and stare at this beautiful male waterbuck for a little bit. So cheetah I'm definitely hoping for. There was a sighting of cheetah on the Kruger boundary that is through the Torchwood property, but we unfortunately couldn't get there. So I'm hoping they come this way. I want a female cheetah to sort of wander in and make Djuma her home, and then maybe we get some cubbos that come and play around. Cheetah cubs are absolutely amazing, and cheetah cubs are lead very different lives when they're younger compared to, say, Tundi's cubs. So Tundi will have sort of anywhere from 2 to 4 dens, usually about 3 dens on average, before she starts meandering around more with them. Whereas a cheetah mother has sort of one in general. Remember, every personality is different, but in general have sort of one den site, and then when they're only a few weeks old, she moves with them and then sort of hides them and hunts a little bit and then comes back. Very different from how leopard and lion function, and that has a lot to do with the fact that cheetah are much more vulnerable to predation by other predators, like the interaction we had earlier with the hyena and the wild dog, as are the cubs. Wild dogs will have den sites for 3 months, very similar to lion and leopard, but wild dogs also tend to have larger numbers. Cheetahs won't function in a pride system or a group system. The females won't, like lions will, and then leopards, their ability to be in trees even as small cubs is very good. Cheetahs can climb trees, as Brent was saying earlier, but it's not really their forte. So they have very camouflaged little bodies that help, but they're quite vulnerable. Our waterbuck has disappeared because I've been so busy chatting with you all, but that's okay. James is also on his way home, as I would guess, with this dark weather coming through, so let's head back to him so he can say goodnight.
Dark weather comes overhead. So many miles still to walk home. Will we make it? You'll only find out tomorrow. We might not be live. Who knows? I'm obviously being very overdramatic. This is an apple leaf tree, and I was hoping to find another frog-hopping insect in it, because the spittlebug is known to live in the apple leaf tree as well as in the weeping wattle. And in the, what did we find it on? We found it on silver cluster leaf today. But I've now become slightly obsessed with finding the frog hopper or spittlebug, which drills into the sap of the tree and then produces a lot of waste, because of course the vascular tissue of the tree carries largely water. Well done, dear. Good. And so it has to drink a lot to get enough nutrition. Let us continue. The Waltherias have yet to flower, and I must just tell you that I'm searching desperately for a caterpillar. I need a caterpillar for the Big Cat Week show next week, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Nat Geo Wild. Don't forget. We have a question come in from Kalen, and he wants to know. I would imagine that bees are probably do pretty well here. I mean, we do have the odd swarm that comes through. I don't think there's anything to harm them in a protected area like this. And so, yeah, I mean, we get lots of different kinds of bees. Honey bees, probably not as many as some of the other bees, but we do find them here. And you're not going to find them struggling in an area like this. But of course, as agricultural land becomes more and more pesticided and poisoned, that's where the loss happens. Cities, anywhere where there isn't natural vegetation and where plants are being regularly sort of sprayed with pesticides and herbicides and all sorts of sides that kill things, that's why they're called sides, you're going to find that the bees are going to struggle. And so not over here, but this is such a small proportion of the overall land mass of South Africa. I think we have about 9% of our land mass under wildlife, and so the bee population will be fine here, but as soon as it goes out of here and tries to migrate somewhere else, of course it's really going to struggle. So yeah, bees in South Africa, I'm sure, are struggling in the same way that they are everywhere else. But interestingly, in a lot of the farms around here, and in the villages around where we have our camp in Kenya, there are lots of people who have hives, and the honey is sold, it's used, and the more and more people that keep hives, obviously, the better it is for bees. And certainly in the Mara, there seem to be a lot more honeybees than there were here. Watch out for that branch for him. He's over it. Well done. Yeah, so I wouldn't, I'm not sure that I can give you more of an answer than that. While we make our way, finally, up towards quarantine, I thought I'd seen my favourite plant, Syncolostinum bracteosus, but I haven't. It was another flower. We're going to go on to quarantine. I might not see you again tonight. If I don't, I hope you have a wonderful evening. Let's go back to Noel.
So earlier in the show, we had those beautiful female Nyala. There was one very young Nyala male with them, but he was still in his camouflage of pretending he's a girl. Now we've got a beautiful little grouping of adult Nyala. Now, adult male Nyala. Now, I love adult male Nyala for the fact is that they're pretty, but also can you see that ridge that's popping up on the back of that one male there? Okay? That has to do with the other male that came through, but now because his ridge is popping up, the other one's ridge is popping up, they're posturing. Basically, they're not territorial. Look at that. It's amazing. I know I repeat myself twice, but yes, sometimes everything needs the word 2 or 3 times. So they're doing that to show a hierarchy amongst the male grouping. They're not territorial, there's a hierarchy. It's kind of similar to something like a giraffe, where they're not territorial, but there's definitely a hierarchy. The giraffes fight more with it. The male Nyala do this posturing, and then they sort of circle each other. They will fight with their horns more than their cousin the kudu. Their cousin the kudu, oh look at that, there, now both of them are doing it. Their cousin the kudu tends not to fight as much with the horns. Oh, now he's going to test the urine of that female. Test to see if she's an estrus, if she's ready to mate. She's not having any. She's like, oh, now there's 2 of you. There's a little bit of a Fleming grimace there from the one at the back. There we go. Testing to see if she's an estrus. Shame that poor female is like, all I want to do is eat, and you 2 boys are so busy coming around me that I had to run away. It's like if you're sitting on a bar stool and you just want to sit there very nicely by yourself and enjoy your glass of wine, and people keep coming up to you and harassing you and going, oh, you look nice. And you're like, no, I want to enjoy my wine. Leave me alone. So this posturing is, again, very similar to the posturing that you would see from your suitors at the would-be bar, and then when you ignore them and move away, they then turn and focus on each other and go, but my muscles are bigger than your muscles, etc., etc. Yes, look at this. Now all of them are doing it. But notice, we've had 3 males do it now. Those 3 males that have done it, that are still doing it, I should say, rather, are the larger 3 of the 5. So they will be more testosterone driven and slightly more, slightly more in charge, as it were, of their ability to get females and to fight off other would-be suitors. Now, I was saying earlier about the male kudus, and we got interrupted by the chasing of the female Nyala there. Male kudus have a tendency not to fight as much with their horns because of the they have a larger corkscrew and they can very easily get stuck. Oh, she's having another wee. He's going up again and having another. No, she really wants nothing. And look, even that young male's now trying to get into the action. Oh, those poor ladies. Well, what an amazing afternoon we've had. It's been extremely varied, from the very, very small to the very large, to really magical moments with lion cubs, to very difficult moments with hyena and a wild dog. Don't forget to join us tomorrow morning. We're going to be live at 5 o'clock our time in the Sabi Sands and carrying on, as far as I know, our normal show. Oh, shame. They're really good after that female. Our normal show. I'll definitely be out in the morning, and I believe James and Tristan, or possibly Scott as well. As tomorrow, don't forget, we are live. We are interactive when we're showing. You can send through all your questions and comments, hashtag Safari Live. From myself, all the other presenters, FC, and camera crew, thank you so much for a wonderful afternoon.